Is that an urban legend? What's the story? Apparently, Senator Carper is not ready to go, which would mean that Senator Lankford is next.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. Thanks for all your testimony on it. Mr. Luke Studio, I want to be able to respond to something you have written in your testimony. You've written in your testimony the IRS has answered more calls than ever this past time, but only 11% of the calls that actually were inbound were actually answered by an IRS customer service rep. And they had some pretty astounding numbers to be able to go with that. 53% of the calls were disconnected due to a lack of customer service representative. So 53% of the calls just disconnected. 27% of the calls, the taxpayer abandoned the call after hours of waiting there. Another 2% of the calls just got a busy signal and didn't get through at all. So while we answered more calls than ever, really only 11% of the calls were actually answered coming in. That's not a great number to be able to have, is that 89% of your calls didn't get through to actually get an answer on that. Am I correct on those numbers?
You are correct, and a lot of it has to do with the volume of the incoming calls. There was a lot of confusion on the part of taxpayers that prompted calls to IRS. The backlog also was a big contributor to that. People were wondering, they weren't getting enough information from IRS's Where's My Refund application. They weren't getting enough information to know, they'd waited beyond the time frame that IRS typically takes to process a return, to pay a refund, had heard nothing. And so they were starting to call with questions.
Were the same individuals answering calls also the same individuals that are processing returns?
Not processing returns, but processing correspondence.
Okay.
And so that it does.
Did that also increase the backlog then as well?
Right.
Do we need to have individuals that are answering calls and different individuals actually doing correspondence rather than them having to go back and forth, or is that okay to have the same individuals doing both?
Typically, it's been a challenge for the IRS. That's one of the reasons that they get a backlog, usually during the filing season, a backlog of correspondence. It hasn't been as much of a problem in prior years as it was in 2020 and 2021, but as we can see right now, it's a significant challenge.
Yeah. So in your testimony as well, you note that 17% attrition rate for those individuals that are processing returns, that those folks are not staying. The overall attrition rate for the entire agency is 7.6%. So obviously significant higher for those that are processing returns. What do you recommend to be able to get a lower attrition rate for those individuals that are processing returns, or is that just a burnout job?
We've recommended that IRS do a skills gap assessment, that they look across their workforce and figure out places where they have specific needs, figure out put a plan in place, put a strategy out there to try to address those needs, to be thinking beyond just the current filing season about what is the workforce of the future going to look like. That plan, unfortunately, they did create a plan, start to implement it, but the implementation's been delayed. From what we understand from IRS, they expect full implementation of their strategic workforce plan, hopefully August 2022.
Okay. Ms. Collins, I want to go into a conversation you were having with Senator Grassley earlier on hiring authorities. This is something we've talked specifically to the commissioner about. We've had multiple requests to be able to come in. As I'm picking up from your testimony, 5,000 open positions in the IRS, 179 of those jobs have actually been filled. That's a real problem. When you stated there's 120 days to be able to go through the process. So let me ask you this. On the direct hiring authority, I have no issue, by the way, giving IRS direct hiring authority for those key positions that need to be done. We've done that in DOD. We've done that in other areas as well. When we've seen a critical need, we've given them direct hiring authority to be able to pick that up. There's no reason it should take 120 days to be able to go through the process and then start training individuals, which will take months to be able to catch up as well. So my question to you is, with that direct hiring authority, you're not talking about taking away background checks and security verifications before they're hiring. What would be the issue with why people wouldn't get direct hiring authority, or what seems to be the fear with not getting that direct hiring authority to IRS?
I personally don't see a downside to it. I do see an upside to the IRS. Especially if we're trying to get this backlog behind us, we need to move quickly. I think in the long term, again, it gives the IRS an opportunity for those key positions, I'm not saying across the board, to be able to be more competitive. If you have a senior person looking at a job at the IRS versus, let's say, an outside firm, being able to commit quickly will make the difference of whether or not we can retain someone versus losing them.
Okay, I hope we can get that done because obviously everyone at the IRS is asking for that as well. Ms. Lewis, quickly, you noted in your testimony February the 9th, the IRS announced the suspension of more than a dozen letters, including automated collection notices normally issued when the taxpayer owes additional tax or has no record of filing a return. That's helpful. Are there other correspondent backlogs and other things that need to be addressed that you think need to be suspended to be able to help protect taxpayers?
Thank you, Senator. And one thing I want to highlight on the backlog and the correspondence, oftentimes our calls and our written correspondence are not about balance dues or an assessment that is made correctly. It's about erroneous notices that come out that we need to change. And because of that, for example, there's a CP 2000 notice, a matching notice, where the IRS sends a notice out to the taxpayer suggesting changes based on what they see. And oftentimes it's not correct and requires correspondence. So we would like that notice to be held. And also I had mentioned there's notices about levying Social Security benefits on elderly taxpayers while they're working through the backlog. So there are a few other notices that we would like to have stopped.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my colleague. I believe Senator Carper and Senator Casey are available online, and we're getting close, colleagues, to the end. So if there are other members who want to come, besides the very patient Senator Young and Senator Hassan, the word should go forward. Okay, Senator Carper.